We're live. We're live. We got everything squared up. At least my AC is still running. Because if my AC wasn't running, I'd be in bad shape. So I apologize. Things beyond our control. Um, it's ironic because one of the things I'm talking about tonight is government accountability. I guess oversight of elected officials, and um, that includes our infrastructure. So welcome to the show tonight. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I want to thank you guys for spending your Thursday nights with me. As always, I'm truly humbled of all the things you could be doing on a Thursday night. You choose to spend time here with me, and that means the world to me. My show is called Omit the Logic. My name is Hank Batiste. This shit makes no sense. It's so funny. I don't know if it's global warming rearing its ugly head, but here in Florida, it's hotter than slavery. And like I just said, something is happening. So I'm going to try to get through this show and I'm going to try to make it as fast as possible. I'm getting weather warnings on my phone from Spectrum. And unfortunately, that's my internet provider. So if something happens, that's what's going on. I want to say hello to three of my jazz greats giving me backup tonight. I'm your man. I'm Hank Batiste. I'm on the mic. And I'm going to just go ahead and get started with the show. I am totally flabbergasted by the awesome power and devastation caused by Ida. I grew up in New Orleans, and I've never seen a hurricane walk down Bourbon Street, dance on Canal Street, tear up the Gulf Coast, and then sashay its ass up north and strut through Philly, Jersey, Delaware, hit all the boroughs in New York and shut down the almost cussed, shut down the subway system. They showed pictures of the subway, and there's about 6 people that died in the South. Overnight, there was 11 people, at least 11 people that died in New York that we know of thus far. So, National Oceanic, don't y'all ever, don't y'all, I don't know whose job it is to name storms, but don't ever in your long legged life name another storm Ida. So, you're right, they're not listening. But in my humble opinion, our elected officials play a major role in this global warming and climate change because they've been irresponsible in recognizing that it's happening and not preparing us, not doing anything to the infrastructure or basically the systems like the water pumping. When the electricity goes out, the pumps stop working. So somebody has to come up with a second, be it wind turbine or something else. It just stands to reason to me. And physics was one of my first scholarships, but it just stands to reason. And I'm not a physicist, nor am I a civil engineer, but it just stands to reason that with 140-mile winds or 75-mile-per-hour winds blowing, if you had some backup wind turbines, it would keep the pumps working. So when somebody jumps on this idea, God damn it, I want my 20% because I said it here first tonight. It's just ridiculous, people. When you look at the fact that when these when this power shuts down, we lose pumping stations, we lose water purification stations. The gas pumps don't work at gas stations, so everything that we depend on for our day-to-day living falls by the wayside. We've been hearing, I know most of you people are old enough to remember back in the late 70s, early 80s, when they did away with spray deodorants and hairspray and things like that because they said the fluorocarbons was messing up the ozone layer. And the ozone layer was preventing us from being burned up, or global warming. So if that is the case, and we stop using things like fluorocarbons in spray cans, why have we amped up this space program with sending all of these satellites in Star Wars into the atmosphere? To add insult to injury, now we have, and I got ahead of myself, but I'm upset. Now we have billionaires that want to have their own rockets so that they can go to the moon whenever they feel like it. When do our elected officials represent the needs of the many and start ignoring the wants of the few, the privileged, those people that can buy an election by buying a politician? So tonight's show is called Oversight, Holding Elected Officials Accountable. Earlier this week, I posted 3 questions on my page. Question number 1 was, what makes a good leader? Question number 2 was, what makes a good public servant? And my third question was, are the two the same? My name is Hank Batiste. Let's omit the logic. This shit makes no sense. Before I get into accountability and oversight and leadership and all of that, I want to talk a minute about COVID. Because COVID, I don't know if Ida is related to COVID, but COVID will not be ignored. It's our new norm. I said this last week and I need to repeat it because this week I see school officials using their brains, and they're taking it upon themselves to instill mass mandates to try to keep the children safe. And then I'm watching the news and I see parents, grown up people, fighting in front of the school over mask mandates. Then I remind myself, these are the same parents that offer up their children for measles, mumps, and rubella. And if 5 of you guys can explain to me what rubella is, they offer up their children for measles, mumps, and rubella. Yet they have a problem not knowing what those 3 diseases are. Okay, they might know what measles and mumps are, but they're adamant about not wanting their kids to wear a mask. The same parents that buy their children Halloween costumes that burned up like kindling. It's made out of this. You might as well call it starter wood. These Halloween costumes, and I know you've seen it, they're not fire retardant. So if they get too close to open flame, back in the days when we had open flames in the house and in places where you have fireplaces, you run the risk of those costumes burning up. If the costume burns up, so does your kid. These costumes are made with masks that makes it hard for Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and all of these superhero costumes and genie and this, that, and the other that their kids wear. It makes it hard for the child to cross the street. It does away with their peripheral vision. So all they can see is through those little slits. So they put their child's life at risk. These are the same parents that are adamant that they do not want their children to wear masks in school, even though it'll save their kid's life. Now, newsflash, public service announcement, there are more than 200,000 confirmed cases of COVID, a corona, a COVID 19, a COVID 21, or whatever they're calling it, the Delta variant, in children now. But I submit to you that number is probably double, if not triple. So we may be looking somewhere close to a 500,000 to 600,000 kids that have been infected with the COVID virus. Because remember, in red states, these statistics are either underreported or not reported at all. There's nothing more I could say about COVID. On cue. God bless you. Thank you, all of you. All of you. Um, as I said last week, COVID has been politicized and it's not going anywhere, no time soon. So it's going to be around. We're getting past this Delta variant. Look for a Gamma or Lambda. It's not going away, people. Protect your children. I know you can't tell your children what to do with their children, but if you have any influence, protect your grandchildren as well. If you do measles, mumps, and rubella or the MMR vaccine, handle this COVID vaccine the same way. Forget all of this stuff going around about it. You know, you're gonna grow two heads. The only thing that happened to me since I took the vaccine is I have this psychosomatic thing that you just saw. When I start talking about it, I either start coughing or I start sneezing because it's on my mind. I don't think my DNA has been altered. I still have the same problems that I have. And every morning I wake up, if my man is standing, that's probably the first prayer I say, yay. So, not to be silly, folks, but these folks, in the name of power, will do anything to retain or gain power. Look at the state of Texas. Texas has passed a law that women, it went into effect today. Women can no longer get an abortion that are past 6 weeks pregnant. If you know anything about pregnancy or about periods or about that, you'll know that if a woman is late, sometimes they don't know until around 6 or 7 weeks, or they're going into that second period, because it's not uncommon for a woman to either have spotty or erratic. So here's the deal in Texas. Women can no longer get a legal abortion that are past 6 weeks pregnant. The doctors have been given advice to women to take the day after pill to try to induce pregnancy. But now they're trying to amend the bill so that they can't do that. Some of these ladies and doctors are telling these people that maybe they should cross state lines to get the abortion. But right now, they're debating whether or not that's legal. To add insult to injury, this went to the Supreme Court, and by a vote of 5-4, they supported the ruling or the law in Texas. And they basically didn't say that it was constitutional or unconstitutional. So let me get this straight. The government wants to tell you when you shouldn't wear a mask, that it's your right not to wear a mask because it's your body. But the same government who says it's your body, whether or not you wear a mask, says that it's not a woman's body and she can't make choices about whether or not she wants to abort a child. That's all I got to say about that. I'm talking about things that make a good public official. Better yet, how do we hold them accountable? And this is a lot, so I don't know if I'm going to get through the accountability tonight and the oversight tonight. But I wanted to touch on one more thing before I got into that. And today is September the 2nd. All of our troops and some close to 200,000 people have been evacuated from Afghanistan. So now it's between the Taliban and ISIS ZK, OKB, bye, on who's going to rule Afghanistan. But here's the deal. When we left, we didn't blow up. We didn't disarm. We didn't make inoperable a lot of the things that we left behind. So they became the property of the Taliban. Now, whether that was done purposely so that the Taliban could fight ISIS-Z for us or not, the first thing you do as a combat-trained Marine, if I leave, if I can't bring something with me, and I did anti-tank and demolitions, it was my job to blow it up so that it doesn't fall into enemy hands. I've already beat this up. Now I'm starting to see more and more of these people who are being portrayed as heroes, and I've got mixed emotions about that. I don't have a problem with them helping us and them being handsomely rewarded. I said it before, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep on saying. The problem that I have is when you bring these people who were a lot of times double agents, because how they got information, they had to be a member of the Taliban or ISIS or Al Qaeda. That's why, that's the excuse they use to get out of there. But let's look at this. They had 20 years to build their own armies. They had 20 years and billions of dollars and trillions of dollars to build an infrastructure that was more modern than the infrastructure that was decimated by Ida here in America. We invested more money in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and rebuilding their infrastructure than we have invested in our own infrastructure. Now, let me tell you what the infrastructure is. The infrastructure is the power grid. So that when, remember, and I'm going to break this down, I'm going to break this down to it's unfixably broke. Think about the old days when you had a panel in your house and you hooked up too many things, too many electrical appliances, and you overloaded the circuit and it blew a fuse. You went out there and you unscrewed the fuse and you looked at it and you said, oh, wow, the fuse box says 30 amps. This is only a 20 amp. That's as simple as I can make it. If we upgrade to a 30 amp, then we don't have to worry about some of these things. If we had air turbine backups, then we wouldn't have to worry about when the power goes out, we lose pumping stations and we lose the ability to have clean drinking water. And we have to be concerned about all of these parasites in our water. That's all I got to say about that, folks. This week I posted these questions, and birds of a feather flock together. So my Facebook family is just as stubborn, just as intelligent, just as opinionated as I am. So when I pose this question, because I have pointed out the misgivings and bad behaviors of certain politicians, they took it as though I was piling on. But I decided to ask the question because when I posed a question about the behaviors of an elected official or a leader, I do so from a scholastic or academic perspective. I've got a master's in public policy and public administration. So when I think about oversight and accountability, I think of things, I think about a fiduciary responsibility. I look at a mayor as being a CEO of a city or municipality. I look at a governor as being a CEO of a state. And I look at a president as being a CEO of the United States of America. So the same rules that makes a good leader should apply to elected officials in a perfect world. So that's my disclaimer. When we start to look at the John F. Kennedys and on and on and on, going all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, we knew that he had a wife and he had a mistress, and he treated both the same. And we accepted that. And somewhere since then, we've become accepting and desensitized to the bad behaviors. So some of you guys says, there's a set of rules for a good leader, and then there's a set of rules for an elected official, because one is being elected, and the other one, I guess, they don't have a say-so about. But regardless to who you are, as a CEO, as an executive director, I worked at the behest of the board of directors. So everybody has someone that they report to. Everyone has somebody, a body that holds them in check. In our government, when we look at something like, and I'm not just talking about the Trumps and the Cuomos, but I'm gonna do a comparison of the two, because here's what we have a tendency to do from time to time. If we consider ourselves a Democrat, and it's a Democrat that we like, we overlook certain behaviors. If we're a Republican and we're seeking power, ethics in politics is an oxymoron. It does not exist. So we have to be able to separate the job from the personal agendas and the personal and political ambitions of our elected officials. When we talk about the Kevin McCarthy's and the Mitch McConnells and Don the Despicable Delusional One, when we talk about Andrew Cuomo, when we talk about Joe Biden, when we talk about Nancy Pelosi, when we talk about John F. Kennedy, when we talk about any elected official, we don't expect them to be perfect. So you're absolutely right, my brother. They don't have to be perfect, but it's up to us to set a standard. And when they fall below that standard, that's when we hold them accountable, watching them to make sure they stand up or they meet that standard is what we call oversight. So I keep talking about this company that I started. And one of the things I want to do is I want to make sure that this company, a Black agenda and policy initiatives, I want to put together this organization so that we become, because my solitary voice falls on deaf ears. But when you, me, and us, and them, and the others, when we have a collective voice, and we may not agree on what makes this or what makes that, but the one thing we have to agree on is everybody has to meet the same standards across the board. If not, then we have what we've had the last 4 years. If not, we have what we have in Texas, in Mississippi, in Florida, and so forth and so on. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Without oversight, without accountability, without someone to say you overstepped. I know you're human, but I'm putting you on notice that this type of behavior will not be tolerated. That's why the governor in California is they're looking at doing a recall. That's why we use the word impeachment. When one party does not play by the rules, and the other party is so busy fighting amongst themselves, we open the door to these bad behaviors. The one thing I dislike about Democrats and independents, they are so hard on each other, personal company included. But I'm hard on everybody. So Sexual harassment in a toxic, hostile workplace should not happen. So when I come down on Cuomo, I look at some of the same behaviors, like it or not, that I see in Trump. And I don't accept the excuse, well, Trump did it. No, I'm daddy number one. You can't come to me and tell me I can't punish you because your brother, your sister did it. I promise you, your brother or sister got his or hers, and you are as well. So let's look at this right quick. Trump held daily press briefings to give corona updates, wink, wink. He's not a great orator or public speaker, but he used these briefings to do the only thing he knows how to do, promote self. Cuomo, he's a governor. He wasn't a president, nor was he a presidential candidate. He held daily briefings to give COVID updates. He could not speak for the other 49 governors. What were the other 49 governors doing while Cuomo was there grandstanding? They were governing over their states. As that state CEO, that's what they were doing. The difference is Cuomo is a second generation politician and very polished as a speaker. He has charisma. He's articulate. He used his relationship with CNN and his younger brother to exploit a disaster. And if you know anything about politics, it's the one thing that I hate about politicians. They look at a disaster as a time to make a name for themselves. Here's a chance to put a feather in my cap. Trump ignored the science, said corona would magically disappear. He tried to focus on the economy. Cuomo embraced the science. He reported numbers and he promoted himself. Now we come to find out that he underreported some numbers. I know people in Brooklyn were standing out in those long lines because there were not enough lines. There were not enough testing sites and vaccinations. Well, vaccinations has not been a problem. But back in the beginning when they were doing testing, there were not enough sites. There were not enough tests. He got up on CNN one day and he says, Governor Hogan down in Maryland is making me look bad. Hogan was a Republican. He ordered these tests. He didn't wait on them to come from the government. He ordered tests for himself from Korea. And then he put the National Guard and the state police out there to pick up the tests so that that other Republican 40 miles away in DC wouldn't steal or confiscate his test. When he did so, Cuomo said, you're making me look bad. No, follow suit. You make yourself look bad. Trump did not want national testing. He undercounted actual tests to make it look like he was actually managing corona better. Out of touch with the actual tests and the stats, there were, and you can check it, fact check me. There were semis, there were refrigerator trucks, there were semis. It was so cold in New York, there were semis that were loaded up with bodies in the parking lots of hospitals in New York. While Andrew Cuomo is on TV grandstanding, and following him was Chris. Well, big brother, it sounds like you want to be president. No, Chris, I'm perfectly happy serving the people of New York right here. Fuck out of here. You took advantage of a situation because we did not have an actual candidate, and you try to throw your hat in the ring. That's why you did what you did. The first time he came up, he was in a polo shirt with emergency management. The second time he came up to the podium, he had on a shirt and tie. The third time he had the flags in his cabinet, trying to look presidential. So was he serving the people of New York, or was he in essence serving himself? There has to be someone that steps in. If we let Trump and Cuomo do what they did, then we got a free fall. I'm gonna wrap this up because I'm scared the power's gonna go out any minute, and I don't want to beat this horse any deader. Folks, we have to come together as voters. We have to demand certain things. The only way we are going to get anything done is we have to come together now to make sure that in 2022, which is about 11 months away, somewhere around January, my little there. Excuse me, somewhere around January, those people that are in the House of Representatives, they only have 2 years. So a lot of them are going to be on the road campaigning. Some of those senators and a lot of those governors are going to stop doing the business. So it's up to us to hold them and the incoming politicians who want to be elected officials accountable. Remind them that they work for us. They're not there for us to look up to or put on a high pedestal. That's all I'm going to do for you tonight. I may have to revisit this because I felt like this was Public Policy 101. All that I have to say about this, one of the reasons I chose never to run, and people tell me all the time, if you're this passionate about it, why don't you run for office? And the simple reason is I don't have the patience for the business as usual. I don't have the patience for everybody's doing it, so you do it too. I'm reminded of the Eddie Murphy movie where he ran for Congress and he came to find out he thought he was a con man. And he got there and he found out this is what a real con was. So with that, I'm going to say good night, folks. But before I go, despite the problems that I had with my YouTube tonight, I'm going to remind you, I'm begging you, go to my YouTube, click subscribe. After I finish this, I'm going to put it on I'm going to put it on my Facebook page so that you will have the link. Subscribe to my YouTube because there are just too many moving parts. And Facebook, I don't know how much longer. If you notice, I don't respond to a lot of things on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook like I used to be because they are coming after a brother. Anything I say, including this, is going to be scrutinized. So they may not attack me for this, but they'll find a reason to attack me. Kevin McCarthy and that Margaret Taylor Greene, Margarine, is it Live of Memorex? They are threatening telecom companies, saying that if they comply with the January 6th investigation and turn over phone records, they will pay a heavy price when and if the Republicans come back to power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it's absolutely necessary that we come up and instill those checks and balances. See you next week, folks. Same Baptiste time, same Baptiste place. As always, important. I wish you love. I wish you peace. Pray for the people, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, and so on and so on and so on. There's going to be a lot of fallout because of Ida. So back in 65, 66, the Temptations best said it. Ball of confusion. Young folks walking around with their heads in the sky, cities aflame in the summertime, and the beat goes on. As always, love, peace. Like your man, hair grease. I'm out of here. Good night.